Good evening, children. Last class, we study about the classical approach and Keynesian, only classical approach. There is something, classical approach is before 1930, that period is known as classical economist period. Like Ricardo, Smith, mainly, J.S. Miller, some known economists are present there. Then after that, neoclassical economists are Alfred Marshall and SCP extended the classical ideas. And in that period, classical ideas like microeconomic issues, laissez-faire economy, invisible hand, continuous market clearing, perfect competition, and sales law of market, which means supply creates its own demand. These ideas based on the classical economists, and among them, from that, when output and employment in the classical system is determined, that is based on the supply, not give more importance in the supply cases. And here in microeconomics, we know that production function is based on the labor and capital. Capital, where capital is fixed, but labor is a variable factor. And when labor changes, then the production also changes. And MPL, marginal productivity of labor, is equal to change in the production by change in the labor. And after that, we know that wage rate also determined from the labor demand and labor supply. Here, labor is demanded because it continues to contribute to production of goods and services. That it is derived demand. Labor is demanded because it is very important element for in the production sector, and because of that, labor gives services on the production sector, and it is otherwise known as derived demand. If the demand for commodity increases, then the producer of particular that commodity will hire more labor. Labor is more important than compared to capital. Classical economists assume that there is a perfect competition market. In perfect competition market, we know that the firms are price takers. They cannot decide the price. Firms choose the output level at ongoing prices in order to maximize profits. A firm will increasing output until the marginal cost of producing a unit of output is equal to the marginal revenue received from its sale. For such a firm, MR is equal to the price, MR equal to P, and MC will be equal to the ratio of wages to number of units of output produced by additional unit of labor. That means MC equal to W by MPL. As per the condition for short run profit maximization, in perfectly competition market, P equal to MC. We know that P equal to W by MPL, so W by P equal to MPL. That W by P is nothing that real wage of the labor. Thus, a firm will hire up to the point where the additional output obtained by hiring one more unit of labor is equal to the real wage paid to the labor. In this figure, you can follow the figure on this page. This condition where employment is depicted on the x-axis and real wage W by P is the real wage which is shown on the y-axis. And at point A, we observe that W by P means real wage equal to the MPL, marginal productivity of labor. To the left of point A, we have find that MPL is greater than real wage, and the right point MPL is less than real wage. The labor demand is downward sloping due to law of diminishing returns. With an objective of profit maximization, the firm employs more labor when MPL is more than real wage, and reduces the number when MPL is less than the real wage. The aggression of the individual firms' demand curves for labor gives economy wide demand curve for labor. So, the aggregate labor demand function LD can be written as the function of the real wage, means in minus. Minus means negative sign, which indicates that a higher real wage rate is associated with the lower demand for labor. That means demand for labor and real wage are oppositely negatively related. When there is high real wage, the supply demand for labor is less. Then labor supply. While maximizing their utility, individuals decide on the amount of work to put in and the amount of leisure to enjoy. Here, there is trade-off between income and leisure. Individuals and economists use the term leisure for all the activities which are off the job. Because of its disutility, labor needs to be compensated for work with age. Individuals weigh cost and benefits of working before deciding the number of hours to work. And individual has 24 hours in a day to allocate between work hours and leisure time. And he chooses the combination of work and leisure which maximize his utility given the wage rate and price level. Thus, it is possible to substitute between work and leisure. So, a labor has two things. He choose like that combination where he get maximum leisure time, and when the real wage is more, then the leisure time is also more. Real income is measured on the in the this can be described within a diagram. In the diagram, you see that real income is measured on the x-axis and real income by real wage is measured on the y-axis. Real income is equal to the real wage WIP multiplied by the number of hours the person works. Each vertical intercept represents zero leisure. In that case, the real income will be WIP into 24 hours. Uniform score labeled as U1, U2, and U3. Here you see that these curves give various combinations of income and leisure, which give equal satisfaction to the workers. The slope of the indifference curve gives the rate at which the person is willing to trade up between for the income. The slope of the indifference curve implies that the increase in income the individual would have to be paid so that he gives up a unit of leisure. When the cost of foregoing an hour of leisure is the real wage per hour by W by P. The straight line rays starting from point 24 on the horizontal axis give the budget lines facing the individual. The slope of these lines is real wage, W by P. Higher real wage rate makes the budget line steeper. Three budget lines are drawn according to the indifference curve, representing three different real wage rates. In the bottom panel, we find that we plot the labor supply curve, which is upward sloping. We can say that labor supply is a function of real wage, which is given by. That means when real wage more, that time labor supply is also more. So here labor supply and real wage are positively related. But in case of the labor demand, that is negatively related. Labor supply equal to function of real wage or W by P. That in plus signs. The positive sign indicates that the labor supply increases as real wage increases. Then that labor supply is determined by real wage, not money wage. Secondly, there are both substitution effect and income effect in the decision making process of an individual on the number of hours he would work. A wage rate increases, a person works more number of hours. Similarly, lower wage rate would discourage the person from work. Income of an individual depends on the number of hours he works multiplied by the wage rate. A higher wage rate implies higher income level for individual, so that when his income increases to a very high level, he may actually decrease his hours of work and enjoy more leisure. This is similar to the income effect in consumer demand theory. It is observed that at a very high, an individual might reduce the work hours and increase leisure. This is a situation where the income effect is dominant. So, at very high wage rates, the labor supply curve assumes negative slope and starts bending backward to the vertical axis. So it is a exceptional case when real wages increases more than the expectation. That time the worker can want more leisure time. Then equilibrium level of output and employment. Then equilibrium condition in the labor market depend on the demand for labor and supply of labor. Along with the production function determines the output, employment and real wage rate in the classical system. In this is also described through a diagram. In this diagram, the equilibrium in the labor market where Y0 is output level, L0 is the employment level, and WIP is the real wage rate. Output and employment are dependent on certain exogenous variables. That exogenous variables are determined outside the model, while endogenous variables are decided within the model. It is very simple that to identify the exogenous variables which affect output and employment. We have used labor demand, labor supply, and production function in to determine output and employment. Thus, any variable that affects labor supply, labor demand, and the production function will in turn affect the level of output and employment. So that labor demand, labor supply, and the production function affect the level of output and employment. In the long run, if there is a change in the capital stock, there will be a shift in the production function because capital input to be fixed in the production function that we consider in the short run. Similarly, if there is a change in the technology, the production function will shift. In case of shift in the production function, MPL will change, which will shift the labor demand curve. The labor supply curve, however, would depend upon a different set of variables. It will shift if there is change in the size of population and if the individual's preference change due to change in the labor leisure trade-offs. In the classical system, the levels of output and employment are dependent only on the supply factor. In the classical system, from we know that from starting we know that in classical system supply side is very important factor to determine output and employment. Then labor supply and labor demand curves. We'll look at the LD and LS as the functions of money wage. We have an upward sloping labor supply curve with upward sloping and labor demand curve with downward sloping, which is a function of money wage, assuming a price level P. And we observe that different price levels give different labor supply curves. Each price level would mean for a given money wage and a different real wage, hence a different labor supply curve. It is described in another diagram where we find that there are different types of labor supply curve and labor demand curve and hence different supply curves. If money wage rate is constant, change in price level would result in shift in the labor supply curve. As prices rise, the LS curve shifts to the right. So as prices go up and the money wage does not increase, The individual is left with a lower real wage and would like to reduce the amount of working hours. That means when labor supply increases, the real wage also decreases. Real wages decreases. Because of that, the individual is left with the lower real wage and would like to reduce the amount of working hours, and he choose the leisure for that. As the price level increases from P1 to P2 to P2 to P1 and 3P1, and the money wages increases from W1 to 2W1 and 3W1, the real wage remains unchanged because W1 by P1 equal to 2W1 by 2P1 equal to 3W1 by 3P1. This leads to the fact that employment remains the same at L1 level. That means the real wage not change, and the employment also remain constant because supply, the demand of labor and supply of labor both are shift or changed. The proportional increase or decreases in both money wage and the price level leave the labor supply unchanged. So that W by P equal to MPL, we have W equal to MPL into P. Suppose money wage remains unchanged at W and price level increases from P1 to P1 and then to 3P1. There is a decline in real wage. More labor is demanded. For that, professionally, increasing the money wage and the price level, however, will leave the labor demand unchanged at L1. For that, they are unchanged and come to the previous point or original point, that is L1. Then aggregate supply function. The firm takes money wage as given while deciding its level of output. That means money wage always given and the output level is deciding through money wage. It indicates that the amount of labor to hire. As there are many firms, one firm's decision will not have any effect on the money wage level. As money wage is fixed, the output supply curve for the firm is positively sloped. Higher prices lead to more output as the real wage declines. At the economy level, however, we cannot assume money wage rate to be fixed. Money wage rate must adjust in order to maintain the equilibrium between supply of and demand for labor. We observe that the initial levels are price level P1, money wages W1, and employment level L1, and output is Y1. If P1 increases to P1 and wage remains at W1, the labor demand would increase to L2 and higher prices will lead to lower real wage. So firms will demand more labor. It will result in expansion of output and employment. At 2P1, labor supply curve shifts to LS 2P1. Therefore, the supply of labor at W1 would be only L2 days. There is an excess demand for labor which is equal to L2 minus L2 days, and hence the money wage will rise. Firms which do not increase the money wage experience a decline in availability of losing on labor. They lose labor. Wages will rise till equilibrium is achieved again. It happens at 2W1 in the figure. The real wage rate is restored at an initial level. Employment level also is back to the initial level. Thus, the output supplied at a higher price, that means 2P1 is equal to Y1. So that the any change in the labor market or firms in supply of demand or the supply of labor, then that means the real wage in increase, which means the loss of the labor. Then When price level reaches to 3P1, wages rise to 3W1 and output remains at Y1. Hence, the aggregate supply curve is vertical. Higher prices will be result in higher output only if they are not accompanied with higher money wages. So that aggregate supply curve is vertical in the higher wages. Higher prices will be result in higher output. The shape of the aggregate demand curve will not make any difference to the equilibrium level of output because the aggregate supply curve is vertical and is stable at Y1. Factors like quantity of money, level of government spending, and level of demand for goods and services are demand side factors. As per classical economists, these factors do not affect the level of output. So that the supply of labor is very important for the production sector. And classical economist idea is based on the supply side, and the demand side factors like government spending, level of demand, or quantity of money and demand for goods and services are ignorable factors. Then Keynesian system. After 1930, the J.M. Keynes books is important and solved the Great Depression. At that time, the Great Depression periods, the economic system is solved by the J.M. Keynes. According to classical economists, they believe that supply creates own demand. As price and wage rate are flexible, equilibrium attained always, and their market is always perfect competition market, so that there is no scope for unemployment and output is always at full employment level. As supply and demand forces lead to an optimum condition for the economy, there is no need for government intervention. Means that classical economy is based on the laissez-faire economy. Then after that, during the 1930s, widespread unemployment, poverty, and insecurity among households present. At this time, Keynes provided a different insight into problems confronting major economies. Some of the salient features of Keynesian economies are there. Keynes economy is best that the Keynes economy is based on some ideas that first demand creates its supply. According to it is just opposite of classical view. Keynes proposed that demand for a product encourages producer to come up with products demanded. If there is idle capacity in the economy, output will increase if aggregate demand increases. They then rigidity in the prices and wage rate. Prices and wage rate are not flexible as suggested by classical economics. Suppliers have monopoly power. Perfectly competitive markets do not exist in the economy. As we receive our wages and salaries in nominal terms, we resist downward movements in wages and salaries. There are several contracts which do not allow immediate revision in prices and wages. Adjustment in prices and wage rate are staged over a period of time. Adjustments are not instantaneous. That is not a case of instant. And there is also price and wage rates are rigid in nature. Then unemployment in economy. In the in classical economists view there is full employment and output is produced at the level of full employment. But according to Keynes, unemployment is normal for an economy. Periodic fluctuation in unemployment can be neutralized by government intervention. If government intervene in the economy, then can it neutralize the unemployment? Then government intervention. Classical economics based on laissez-faire. That means there is nobody interfere the economy. But Keynes said that if aggregate demand is falling short of aggregate supply, in Keynesian system the government should increase its spending. And then can thus in the Keynesian system government has an active and important role in the economy. Then, if there is a large scale unemployment in the economy, government should create jobs through investment in productive activities. If inflation is high, government should to take restrictive policies to reduce the level of aggregate demand and control inflation. Then aggregate supply curve. According to classical economists, aggregate supply curve is vertical. The classical economists, however, were referring to the long run situation. But according to Keynes, short run is also important. In the short run, the aggregate supply curve is horizontal. If the available resources in the economy are underutilized, an implication of the above is that increase in aggregate demand will result in increase in output without increasing prices. So, Keynesian theory is Keynesian system is totally opposite of the classical system. Then the we know that output, income, and expenditure are three different ways of measuring the level of economic activity in an economy. In the on supply side, Keynes take the aggregate supply curve to be horizontal, and in the at the equilibrium level, the demand for and supply of output are equal according to classical economics. According to Keynes economics, equilibrium and aggregate demand can be determined through the con- aggregate demand determined through consumption, investment, and government expenditure and net export. Aggregate demand refers to the expenditure that occur in buying goods and services in a particular period of time. According to Keynes, demand side is affordable in the employment, and the total demand for goods and services is known as aggregate demand. The factors which together make aggregate demand are consumption, investment, government expenditure, and net exports. The aggregate demand for goods and services to be constant, we get a horizontal AD curve. It means that AD is independent of income and output levels. In the diagram, you see that A in the y axis it represent AD, aggregate demand, and x axis we aggregate demand you will see income. At a 45-degree line shows equality between the variables shown on x-axis and y-axis. That means at any point on this 45-degree line, AD equal to y. In other words, this line represents the locus of equilibrium points where aggregate demand is equal to the output level. In case of eddy curve is horizontal, we can say that the equilibrium exists at point E where eddy equal to y, and no forces are causing any change at point E. Equilibrium level of output is y1. In case firms produced to the left of y1, aggregate supply is less than aggregate demand, and there is rundown of existing inventories. On the other hand, if half produced to the right of Y1, there is excess supply and inventory will increase. In both the cases, there will be a movement towards Y1. At E, the farms are selling exactly what people demand. That means at point E, aggregate demand is equal to supply product. In case of deviation from Y1, we have positive or negative unemployed, unplanned inventory
Excuse
investment.
me, ma'am. Hello. Hello, ma'am.
UN, unplanned inventory equal to production minus AD, aggregate demand. When Y greater than AD, aggregate demand, we
Hello,
find that
ma'am.
U1 is positive.
You can hear me?
Yes?
Yes, ma'am. Can I question me, ma'am?
Yes?
मैम बट मेरा डाटा एनालिसिस सब्जेक्ट है मैम, उसकी क्लासेस नहीं हो रही, आप प्लीज हेल्प कर सकती हो आप मैम?
क्या
या
बोले? ठीक से
मेरे
बोलिए।
पास मेरे पास सब्जेक्ट है डाटा एनालाइज,
हम्म।
उसकी मम्मी कोई मैसेज कोई क्लासेस नहीं हो रही मैम, प्लीज आप हेल्प कर देते आप उसके लिए?
ठीक, तो आप सेंटर में कोऑर्डिनेट करिए ना।
मैम वो कर चुका हूँ बट वो सर जी कोई रिस्पॉन्स नहीं देते मैम। मैं इको भी है डाटा एनालिसिस भी है मैम, ये बात है, ये प्रॉब्लम सी आ रही है मेरे को।
वो आपका
इको
सब्जेक्ट का कंफर्म नहीं है।
नहीं कंफर्म
अच्छा, उसका उसका
है।
कोई कुछ पता नहीं मैम।
ओहो।
बस मैम डाटा एनालिसिस में प्रॉब्लम आ रही है मैम, इको तो मैं इको का मैम इको का मैसेज आ गया जी, मेरे फ्रेंड ने मैसेज किया है,
हम्म।
ये बात है।
ठीक है, देखते हैं ना। हम कोऑर्डिनेट कंसल्ट करके आपको बता रहे हैं
हाँ यस
बाद
मैम, बता
में।
दें। ओके
ठीक
मैम।
है। When y greater than AD, we find that ui is positive. That means there is an addition to the stock of inventory. That means when AD is greater with y, that means unplanned inventory is going to addition with the aggregate demand. When y is less than AD, we find that ui is unplanned inventory of inventory investment is negative. That means the existing inventory is to be used in order to meet the aggregate demand. It is also called unplanned inventory disinvestment. In case of the when y is less than AD, that time unplanned inventory is disinvestment. This leads us to equilibrium condition is y equal to AD. So, at equilibrium, there is no unplanned inventory investment. Aggregate demand is also indicated by planned spending. That means in equilibrium, there is no question of unplanned inventory. Hence, aggregate demand is also indicated by planned spending. Hence, we can say that the equilibrium planned spending equals to income. So, when equilibrium is coming, that means when y equal to AD, that time planned spending equals with income. Then consumption function. Consumption function. It is the one of the major determination of aggregate demand is consumption expenditure or consumption. We generally observe that consumption expenditure rises as income level rises. So we assume that the consumption and income are positively related. We ignore for the time being that there is no role of the government. It is forget that there is no role of government. Then what happened? Instead of disposable income, we consider only income and to find the consumption. In that case, in case income is zero, whenever our income is zero, the individual still consume and hence the consumption function is not entirely dependent on income. In such a situation, the individuals are expected to sell off their assets such as stocks, bonds, extra. Let us bonds extra. Then, at the time of C equal to C days plus CY, the level of consumption of an income is zero. You should note that C days is the level of consumption when income is zero. For each rupee increase in income, the level of consumption increase by small c. This is the slope of consumption function. It is also known as the marginal propensity to consume. We should note that MPC will lie between 0 and 1. which indicates that when MPC is 0, consumption is not rising due to rise in income. When MPC equal to 1, that means the consumption is rising by the same amount as the rise in income. In other words, it means if C equal to 0, that means C equal to C dash. The, the MPC is positive, hence the curve is upward sloping. We can find out the level of saving in the economy from the consumption function. If the fraction C is consumed, then the remaining portion y I 1 minus C should be saved because by assumption income is either consumed or saved. So S is the income is equal to saving and investment and saving and consumption. When consumption is saving equal to y minus c. Saving is also an increasing function of income with the slope I1c. The marginal propensity to save in the case of saving function is equal to 1 minus c equal to s. The negative sign of s, that the saving that means the negative sign of C dash can be written as S dash. That the saving function is S equal to S dash plus S plus Y. So we know that Y equal to CY plus C by Y plus S by Y. In the this equation represents that the ratio of consumption to income is called average propensity to consume. Similarly, the ratio of saving to income is called average propensity to save. Thus, the APC plus APS equal to 1 means income always equal with saving and consumption. Any change in income, so there is increase in income, that means consumption increases and also saving increases. Then relationship between consumption and aggregate demand. Consumption and investment as the two components of aggregate demand, and AD equal C plus 1 and C equal to C dash plus C1 and I dash equal to AD. Then AD equal to A dash plus CY. A dash equal to autonomous expenditure independent of income, where I dash is planned investment which is taken as fixed. You should note that C dash plus I dash is mentioned as A dash, where A dash is the autonomous expenditure which is independent of income level. The aggregate demand curve is obtained by vertically adding investment to consumption curve. Investment to the consumption curve. An investment is autonomous. It does not affect the slope of the consumption function. And equilibrium takes place at point E with equilibrium level of output at Y0 and equilibrium aggregate demand at AD0. Slope of eddy curve is C, because of which eddy curve is parallel version of the consumption curves. On this diagram, on the left of Y0, on the 0 or on the right of Y0, AD is not equal to Y. That means economy experiences disequilibrium. In such cases, either the inventory is built up or it is run down. Equilibrium is maintained at the output level where AD equal to Y as the 45-degree line crosses eddy curve. We call it Keynesian cross. Then the equilibrium condition is Y equal to AD. That means Y equal to A dash plus CY and or Y minus CY equal to A dash. Equilibrium level of output and income Y0 will be equal to Y0 equal to Y I1 by 1 minus C A into A. In the diagram, we see that MPC is in a denominator with a negative sign. This means that Y and C are positively related, and clearly Y and A are also positively related. A steeper aggregate demand, that means higher MPC, will lead to a higher income and output level. Similarly, higher interest rate while the MPC is constant will lead to higher equilibrium output and income level. In case individuals spend a higher fraction of their additional income, it will influence the income level positively, and the output level will rise. The higher consumption expenditures sends the signal to the producer that more goods and services are spent at, and hence the production is required to be increased. So when in income influence the income level positively influence the output level. Because of that, when income increases, consumption expenditure also increases, which give to production sector to increase their production. A higher value of MPC lead to higher level of output and income. So level of output and income also, the level of high level of output income also depend on the MPC of a consumer. Then multiplier investment leads to increase in production capacity, and therefore the level of output increases. When investment is going on, then also production also increase, production capacity also increase, which increase the output of the firm. Aggregate output and aggregate income of an economy are the same. Then a question arises: how much the equilibrium level of income rises if autonomous spending rises by rupees 1? Then autonomous demand or spending rises by rupees 1. Then at equilibrium, the level of income shall also rise by rupees 1. But this is not the case, because this is described through a concept as multiplier. Suppose output increases by rupees 1 to match the rise in autonomous spending. This rise in output and income in turn gives rise to induced spending as consumption rises as a result of rise in income. This induced expenditure would be C into delta A dash. Production increases further to meet this induced expenditure. But when income increases, induced expenditure also increases. To meet this induced expenditure, production sector also increase its output. By now, the output and income have increased by delta A dash plus C into delta A dash. That means Y plus C multiplied by delta A dash. This will further give rise to induced expenditure and so on. H. Consumption is more than 0 or less than 1, then C square also less than C, and C to power 3 also less than the C power 2. That induced expenditure keeps becoming smaller as the number of rounds progress. Then cumulative change in aggregate spending is thus equal to a multiple of the increase in autonomous spending, and the multiple is delta Y by delta A equal to 1 by 1C. This multiple is called the multiplier. The multiplier is the amount by which equilibrium output changes when autonomous aggregate demand increases by 1 unit. If we denote the multiplier as delta, it is equal to 1 by 1 minus C. We should note that You should note that this is dealing with a two-sector closed economy, compromise households and firms. There is neither government nor foreign trade. When you include the government and foreign trade, this above formula will change. We know that higher C means steeper AD, and we already have discussed that steeper AD means higher Y. We conclude by saying that a change in the output will be larger than the change in the autonomous saving due to multiplier effect. In other words, if an economy for some reason experiences a shock that reduces income, then people whose incomes have gone down will spend less, and this will reduce equilibrium income further. So, multiplier in the two-sector model, the is change in aggregate spending is equal to change multiple of increase in autonomous spending, and the multiple is delta y by delta a equal to 1 minus 1 by 1 minus c, and the multiplier is the amount by which equilibrium output changes when autonomous aggregate demand increases by 1 unit. In this figure, we saw that the impact of an increase in aggregate demand on equilibrium output. We assume that aggregate demand increases from AD to AD days due to an increase in the autonomous component of A dash to A. As there is an increase in autonomous investment due to which the autonomous component increases. As a result, the equilibrium point shifts from E to E days. We should note that AD equal to A days plus CY and AD days equal to A days plus CY, where A days is greater than A. In the figure, E dash P is the change in autonomous spending, that is delta A dash, while E dash P is the change in aggregate demand is delta AD. Change in the output level that means delta Y is the difference between Y1 and Y0. Change in the equilibrium output is equal to the change in the aggregate demand. That means delta Y0 equal to delta AD. At the change in aggregate demand, we can say that delta AD equal to delta ADS plus C delta Y0. Delta AD, we know that delta AD equal to delta Y0. Then when equations are going on, then we find that delta Y0 equal to 1 by 1 minus C delta A dash. Here, this one is simple multiplier where this at the time when aggregate demand increases, shifts to upward, that case, what happened in the multiplier we can find. Now, investment multiplier. Investment multiplier means the increase or decrease that occur due to increase or decrease in investment automatically. Autonomous investment, IDAS, is a part of autonomous spending, ADAS. Hence, any change in IDAS will lead to a multiplier effect on the equilibrium level of income and output. The whole analysis remains the same as mentioned in the previous section, but to specifically calculate the change in income due to change in investment, we find that delta Y0 equal to 1 by 1 minus C delta I dash. In case of simple multiplier, we consider that the A dash, which is autonomous spending, and I autonomous spending. Here in the investment multiplier, that same thing is present, but delta y0 equal to 1 by 1 minus c and delta I dash. I dash is the autonomous investment. For example, if C equal to 0.2 and delta I dash equal to rupees 50 crore, let us find out the change in the equilibrium level of income and output. Delta y0 equal to y1 minus 0.2 into 50 crore. 50 crore is the delta I dash. That means autonomous investment. Then 50 by 0.8 crore and otherwise 62.5 crore. The equilibrium level of income Y0 was initially rupees 120 crore. Now, after an increase in autonomous investment of rupees 50 crore, the equilibrium level of income reaches to 182.5 crore. That means rupees 120 crore plus 62.5 crore. An increase of rupees 50 crore in investments lead to an increase of 62.5 crore in the output. If we calculate the investment multiplier, it will be delta y0 by delta I dash, and that means 1 by 1 minus c, and that is 1.25. So, investment multiplier also depend on the autonomous investment, and which is the part of autonomous spending. When any change in autonomous investment will lead the multiplier effect on the equilibrium level of income and output, which increase the investment multiplier increase the total income of the production sector. Now, there is certain limitation to this multiplier sector. So, the limitations of multiplier. As we know that aggregate output of an economy cannot be more than the full employment output level. That means aggregate output of an economy cannot be more than the full employment output of level. Thus, output, income, and employment can expand till the economy has unutilized resources. If there unutilized resources are present, that means the output, income, and employment can be expanded. Second, it is implicitly assumed that income received is spent on consumption or saved in financial institution, so that banks use the money in extending loans. If income received is not spent at any of the subsequent stages, rather kept as ideal cash at hand, then the value of the multiplier will decrease. This is also a limitation of the multiplier. It is assumed that there is no shortage of consumption goods in the economy. There is no shortage of consumption goods in the economy. If there is shortage of consumption goods, the households or individuals who are the income recipients will not be able to spend on consumption. That means if the economy faces the shortage in the consumption goods, that means the households or individuals are not spent in the consumption, because they are the mainly recipients of income. It will result the decline in the MPC, hence the multiplier also decline. Then it is assumed that there is no time lag between income received and expenditure incurred. Sometimes there is a time lag interval between the receipt of income and the spending of it, and similarly between the spending and its reappearance as income. If the time lag is long, there is a decrease in the level of expenditure and consumption in subsequent periods. This will lead to smaller value of multiplier. That means here also time also important factor to determine multiplier. If interval between the receipt of income and spending of it is similar, spending it, and between the spending and its reappearance in income, if the time lag is long, there is a decrease in the level of expenditure on consumption in subsequent periods. This means that there is smaller of multiplier. It is assumed that there is ideal production capacity in the economy and there is no increase in prices due to increase in aggregate demand. If the price level rises, consumption may be lower and value of the multiplier will be affected. If the Keynes assume that the economy is ideal, production capacity is ideal, and there is no increase in prices, means there is constant prices, and due to increase in the demand also. If suppose if price level rises, then what happen? Consumption may be lower, and value of the multiplier will be affected. Beside these limitations, limitations are present, and economists are also criticize these limitations. Besides this, the investment multiplier is an important tool of policy analysis. For the economist, policymakers, it is a important tool, important concept. Investment multiplier is important concept to describe the policy analysis. So that from this section we know about the Keynesian model, Keynesian system, and the classical system, and comparison between both the systems. And we know about this how equilibrium is derived by the Keynes economist, and how the aggregate equilibrium and aggregate demand or consumption function affect the economy of the country. And this between these things, how labor real wage determination among them, the Keynes is the best economy to provide the mark for the macroeconomic, or his concept solve the maximum problems in the economy. And the Keynesian grows and gives us the equilibrium level of income and output. This Keynesian grows also important concept which describe as the level of income and output. And the level of income and output are dependent upon the autonomous investment. So the investment multiplier often denoted by delta alpha, that is 1 by 1 minus c. So here we complete this section, and from this section, any doubt? Okay, then bye.